We are now going to move into our next program, a panel session entitled, How Can a City's Sustainability Projects Benefit Everyone? We are honored to have Van Jones once again return to the stage to moderate this discussion, and he is joined by Larry Falcon, Director of Office of Environment and Sustainability for the City of Cincinnati, Alice Kennedy, Deputy Commissioner for Green, Healthy, and Sustainable Homes for the Baltimore Department of Housing and Community Development, and Robert Bell, Economic Inclusion Coordinator for the Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority. Van, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello. So they rude over there, just loud. But we're gonna ignore them because the main show is up here. So, when I was talking before, I was talking about my challenges in the Bay Area, which are the same challenges all around the world, and certainly the same challenges here. And we are so lucky to have folks here who are dealing with it on a daily basis, trying to figure out not just how you have a green economy or green programs, but how they can benefit everybody. My organization is called Green for All. Not green for some, but greenforall.org. And so we're going to have a discussion about that. So we thought that because we have two people from Cincinnati and one person from Baltimore, we'd let the Cincinnati Titans go first. So we're going to first hear from Larry Falcon. Again, he is the Director of the Office of Environment and Sustainability here in Cincinnati. And then he's going to be followed up immediately by Robert Bell, who is the Economic Inclusion Coordinator with the Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority. And they'll take about 5 minutes apiece, and then we'll go right into Alice from Baltimore. I'll give her a good introduction when it's time for that. And take it away.
Thank you, Van. And I want to start by recognizing that your comments earlier about your experience in Oakland really resonated, that Cincinnati and so many cities around the country, I think, can relate to that example, that Cincinnati has been doing sustainability work for a long time and has been doing equity work for a long time, and primarily they have operated in separate silos. And the idea of finding the places where sustainability and equity happen together is a new and wonderful place to be exploring and working. And we've got some accomplishments to report, but we've got more opportunities on the road ahead. I want to observe that the sustainability work in Cincinnati has been going on for quite a while, and we've talked about that in this room in previous years. Cincinnati's been working to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, and we have reduced our carbon footprint by 18% over the last 9 years. A really significant accomplishment. We've done that by focusing on energy work and transportation work, minimizing the waste that we generate, maximizing recycling, promoting local food and eating low on the food chain, all the things that we've been working on and have been successful at. But we need to step back and recognize that we have not always done a good job of sharing those benefits with the whole community. And that's what today's discussion is about. I want to say a word or two, all discussions are local, about what climate change looks like in Cincinnati. Because for us, it's not sea level rise, and it's not coastal storms, and it's not massive droughts, and it's not massive wildfires. In Cincinnati, what our change in climate looks like is extreme weather events, extremely intense rains, and extreme heat waves. And that is not on the same devastating level as sea level rise. But it's very, very important. And when we think about the fact that in our community in the last year, we have suffered 600-year storms, well, what does that look like for Cincinnatians? In a lot of cases, what it looks like is basement flooding. And we say, basement flooding, so? But what happens, unfortunately, in a lot of cases is when you get basement flooding, you get mold. And when you get mold, you get indoor air quality problems. And when you get indoor air quality problems, you get people with respiratory problems. And we have neighborhoods in Cincinnati where 40% of our children have asthma. And we have other neighborhoods in Cincinnati where virtually 0% of our children have asthma. And so that, being able to breathe is a pretty fundamental thing. And so we start from, basement flooding, big deal, to in some of our communities, a vast number of our children are sick because these environmental burdens are not equally distributed and we're not equally protecting people. So that's what it looks like on the ground. When we look inside city government and look at the delivery of city services, Van Jones said before, we have segregation, but we don't have the dogs and the fire hoses. If we don't have the dogs and the fire hoses, what is making our neighborhoods separate? Why is it that there are two neighborhoods in Cincinnati that are literally across the street from each other and have a 20-year difference in life expectancy? Something on the ground is causing disparities, and until we figure out what it is, then we don't understand what's going on. And so I want to talk for a minute about potholes, because potholes are a good way of sort of understanding city service delivery. We have a facially neutral program for maintaining our streets. Every neighborhood gets their streets repaved on a cycle. It's the same cycle in every neighborhood. We fix potholes on a complaint basis when people call us to come out and fix potholes. And yet, there are neighborhoods in the city that have better streets and neighborhoods in the city that have worse streets. And you can look at demographics and predict which neighborhoods are going to be which. So why is it that a facially neutral city program is receiving different results on the ground? That's the question that we end up asking ourselves over and over again, because potholes are one of 100 areas where we deliver facially neutral programs that have a different impact on the ground. In the case of potholes, I told you that we fix them when someone calls and complains. Guess what? Not everybody calls and complains. Not every neighborhood is equally likely to pick up the phone and request services from their city government. And when you're slow to fix a pothole, the pothole gets bigger. And by the time you get out there, the road is so damaged that even when you fix it, it's not the same quality road it would have been if you got out there when the pothole was little. And so just the fact that our service delivery is dependent on individual requests means that we're going to have a disparate impact on the ground. We could have this discussion for a long time and understand a series of things that governments do to meter out their programs that seem facially neutral and result in disparate impacts. And that is the place that we are starting to scrutinize our own activities and try to figure out, what does a solution look like? We've got 5,000 city employees. Many of those city employees drive the streets every day. If we deputized every city employee to report all the potholes that they see, then the requests would come in on a timely basis all throughout the city, and we'd be able to reveal what the next thing is that's stopping us, because I'm not sure that would actually solve the problem, but it would get us over this barrier. So that's kind of where we're at in Cincinnati, and sort of scrutinizing our activities and trying to understand what's producing the results we see on the ground.
Oh, I have my own mic. Wow. Now I also used to be black most of my life too, so I know how you feel. We began to ask ourselves at Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing, and Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing is a public housing unit of HUD. We're the 17th largest in the country. We serve over 15,000 families plus, and we own about 5,000 buildings that we have to take care of and repair and renovate and rehab on a regular basis. We spend a lot of money doing that. There's a lot of economic opportunities, but there's also a lot of challenges. But so before I get into that, I'd like you to, and I'll tell you the reason why I'm going to ask you to do this now, and I'll tell you in a minute. I want you to give another hand to all the small businesses that got a recognition and award today. Give them a hand. Come on, come on, come on. Let it loose. Now, the reason is I am so thrilled and excited to be here because most of those companies are what we call Section 3 businesses that do work for us. And they make a commitment to put public housing residents, Section 3 residents, and low-income people to work on a continual basis. Because of those companies, we generally get about 150 low-income people hired a year. So, you know, give them a hand. I mean, they're doing this, and they're doing a great job at it. Now, I love Van's work, wealth, and health whole idea. And again, at CMHA, we had to ask ourselves, you know, why don't we have green, affordable housing in Greater Cincinnati? And the reason is we can't do it ourselves. We need your help. We need the city, we need the county, we need the corporations, we need the businesses, because those businesses that got awards today, they're helping us in several ways. They're helping it with the environment because now they're bringing sustainable services for us to use to help maintain, renovate, and rehab our properties. The services that they bring are sustainable services. But they're also putting residents and low-income people in Hamilton County to work. And for me, being a Section 3 coordinator, that's one of my most important goals. So it's happening, and that's why I'm so excited about it. But there's challenges to it. So and let me tell you one of the challenges is going to be, there's a program, most of you might already know this, but public housing is going through a revolutionary change right now, and it's called RAD, Rental Assistance Demonstration. And what RAD is HUD's effort to renovate and to preserve public housing property throughout affordable housing property throughout the United States, because it is continually dwindling, because we have $26 billion backlog of needed repairs across the country, $26 billion. And HUD can't pay for that. They can't pay for it. And Congress told it, we can't pay for that. So they instituted RAD, Rental Assistance Demonstration, which allows us to go for private and public fund, private and public funding to do the renovations in our property. But that's going to change the way we do affordable public housing and affordable housing. So we've got to change.
Wait. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude. But when you say it's going to change it how?
Well, because we're not going to get as much money from HUD. You know, I mean, a lot less money from HUD. But it opens up all the other ways. We're going to be doing mortgages. We're going to be doing tax credits. We're doing that now. It's happening now. FHA loans and other private grants. Yeah. I mean, it's changing the way we have to fund repairs, renovation, and rehab. But I'm going to tell you the good thing about this. In the last 4 years, we've raised, through RAD, we've raised $4 billion in renovation, rehab that we've been able to do for properties across the country, right? If we had gone through the old capital grant program that we'd had to do to get money for renovation rehab, it would have taken 15 years to get that $4 billion. So it's going to be a major change. The other way is we're going to have to change the way we manage properties and take care and maintain properties itself.
But when you say change from what to what?
Well, you are still able to not have any kind of income, but that's going to change. Because we got to pay mortgages down the road in 5 years. So everyone is going to either have to be in school or working or some kind of support or getting some kind of funds in to help us, because we have to. I guess it's I'm not supposed to say this in government, but we have to make a profit to pay those mortgages back. Okay, that's different from us. So we have to learn how to do that. But again, it'll help us if we're sustainable. If we're looking at what we're able to save with energy cost and water, water cost and all that kind of thing, it's, we can save our residents and ourselves millions of dollars, extra $1 million a year. So all I'm saying is there's a lot of changes coming down. We're still trying to figure it out, but we also know we can't do it ourselves, and we need your help. We need the communities and the cities and the counties' help to make, and because I'm again a big proponent of environmental justice. And I think we must have green affordable housing. I mean, especially with RAD and the new transitions that we're going through, we must be able to produce green affordable housing in this country. Okay, thanks.
Right. Well, we're going to hear from Baltimore. Part of why I think it's important that we have both of the cities is because of the similarities and the differences. One of the things I wanted to make sure you address, after you address whatever you're going to address, is this whole thing around perception, which we had been talking about earlier, and how even when you're doing good stuff, there's still challenges, but then when you meet the challenges, you don't get the credit. And just that whole thing, because I think that's a part of what goes on in the Heartland. So.
Hi, everyone. Alice Kennedy, Deputy Commissioner for Green, Healthy, and Sustainable Homes for the City of Baltimore Department of Housing and Community Development. I've actually only been in this role for a year. Before that, I was actually the city's sustainability coordinator for 6 years. So I've lived, breathed, and worked in terms of looking at sustainability for the entire city as a whole. And I'm actually lucky right now in some regards. I could relate to Van a little bit on that burnt out level and that burnt out scale. I can relate. I did some great therapy that helped me get through some different things. And I wouldn't be able to do the job that I do now without having that time. And I get to focus on housing, but I actually oversee the city's weatherization office, our Office of Rehabilitation Services, our lead hazard reduction program, the Office of Home Ownership, Baltimore City's Summer Meals Program, the Baltimore Energy Initiative, which is a $52.8 million 3-year grant program, and one of my favorite projects, the Baltimore Energy Challenge, which I'll talk a little bit more about. So it's a lot on the plate. And we see a lot of things that happen on a regular basis that come in. The city's sustainability program started, it was one of the first sustainability programs in the country. We started kind of planning 2008, 2007. And even then, we knew that we couldn't just be a group of 21 commissioners and a sustainability office of a staff of 2, both white women. So we were still on the, on the blind spot, and definitely had a sore spot, that we could not do this on our own. Baltimore City is a neighborhood. It's a neighborhood city. We have over 250 neighborhoods. Each neighborhood is different. Some of the neighborhoods are literally, it's called 4x4 because it's 4 blocks by 4 blocks. And the people in that neighborhood have completely different viewpoints and concerns than the people that are literally one street across. Same as Larry said earlier about Cincinnati, we have, depending upon where you live in Baltimore, your life expectancy can be greatly diminished by what block you're on and what section of town you're in. And so we looked at it back then at inclusion, translation, and engagement. Because if we went out to the community and started talking about sustainability, first of all, everyone would definitely know that we went to college, and they really wouldn't know anything else. So that's where the translation piece comes in. How do you talk about your work in a way that resonates with people on the ground that are living their daily lives that, for, in our case in Baltimore, sometimes are struggling just to survive that day? Whether or not that be to survive, to make it home without being shot, whether or not that's survive by making sure there's food on the table for 3 kids, whatever it may be. So how do you make sure that you're using language that resonates? How do you engage residents at that level? How do you make sure that you've included pretty much everybody that needs to be included at the table? And we thought we did a good job. We came out with a sustainability plan. We used the same principles, which we created a climate action plan. We have Homegrown Baltimore, which is our urban ag plan. We have Disaster Preparedness Project and Plan, otherwise known as DP3, which is our resiliency, our climate adaptation and resiliency plan. And we use those guiding principles throughout all of those. The work that we've done since 2009 has allowed us, we were fortunate enough to receive the STAR sustainability rating of a 5-star city. We were the 3rd city nationwide to receive the 5-star rating. But even with that, which the STAR, Larry could tell you a little bit more. It is, I worked sometimes until 3 o'clock in the morning for about 3 months doing the data gathering and database work that needs to happen for the reporting part. This isn't just like you fill out an online survey and you get 5 stars. There's a lot of in-depth work that goes into this. And we knew that we had more to do. And so we're in the process of updating our sustainability plan right now, but we're doing that in a way that actually puts equity as a lens. And it's not just as a lens in terms of just being a tenant. We actually use the word equity. We've had an equity consultant coming in. We've re-engaged. Now, in the first go-around, one of the ways that we included, we had over 150 sustainability ambassadors back in 2008, 2009, community members, white, black, young, old, youth, elementary school students, high school students, rich, lower income, going out and engaging residents. We did the same thing this time, but we increased the number. We did another additional survey, and we're using equity across the whole piece. So you can have something that's going to be 5 focus areas, but those 5 focus areas, and then all of the steps, all of the actions, all of the measures that we think about when we do sustainability planning, which, you know, it's people, planet, prosperity, but a lot of times there's portions of those legs, a lot of times on the people part, where that leg is going to be a little bit shorter. So we're really not equal all the way around. How do we make sure that our new plan that comes out looks at equity across the entire board? So if we're doing a program that is going to be fixing potholes, which we don't get that many of. I grew up in Cleveland Heights, so we get a lot of potholes up there, but we don't get as many in Baltimore, but I can relate. You know, how do we make sure that what we're looking at creating is inclusive? We have a survey result, over 55% African American response on our surveys. We have an additional 150 sustainability captains going out getting information, and we've built a lot of programs off of this. The Baltimore Energy Challenge is one of them. We have over 250 energy captains across the city, over 175 junior energy captains. And next week we'll be installing LED light bulbs.
What does an energy captain do?
Energy captain, so Baltimore Energy Challenge is built on the premise that if you are a city government, if you are a utility, that you as a community member are not going to listen to a word that I have to say. You're all sitting here nicely listening to what I have to say, in part because you have the post-lunch kind of coming down. But when you're out in the community, that isn't going to happen. So we recruited community members. And this program I was lucky enough, program started in 2009. I was the community liaison and strategic planner for the Baltimore Energy Challenge at that time. So we had community members, and we trained them not only in tips and tricks around what to do to save energy in your home, but I also included a component in that captain training, which was strategic to community organizing. So how do you become a community organizer? How do you practice a script? How do you knock on a door and talk to someone? How do you look at this in a way that we're not just going to talk about energy, but you're having a face-to-face conversation with your neighbor, and that conversation might lead to something else, which might lead to something else, which might lead to you being able to know that they actually need assistance with getting food benefits. So we incorporated that. We have 250 of them across the neighborhoods in Baltimore doing peer-to-peer, community-based social marketing, if you want to use the real terms on those.
So an energy captain is like Captain Planet, but way cooler.
Absolutely way cooler. Plus I give them purple hats and awesome water bottles and really nice canvas bags. And I have to say, I am really lucky. We had, one of the programs I oversee is the Baltimore Energy Initiative, which is a 3-year, multi-million, $52.8 million program. And that looks at the fact that we have a pyramid base, which is community engagement at the bottom. And then we move to energy assistance, case management. So one of the things we did in Baltimore City when we look at equity is that it is really difficult if you are a single mom with 3 kids working 2 jobs to try to fill out an application to get weatherization assistance. And we combine that into one single application so that when you come in, that single application screens you not only for weatherization assistance, but lead hazard reduction, Office of Rehabilitation Services, as well as 250 other state, local, and federal benefits that you as a family member might qualify for.
This must be the longest form on Earth. Is it?
No.
It's not.
No.
I wish they answered like this on television, because then I could say more stuff. But I just think it's just so brilliant because those of us who were community organizers before we got better paying jobs,
True.
it was, a lot of it is you just spend so much time on the paperwork to get the paperwork so you can fill out the paperwork to then stand in line to get some more paperwork. And you're saying you got one form?
One form. And I have social service coordinators that will go to homes, especially of our most vulnerable population, which is our low-income seniors in the city of Baltimore. And they'll go to the house. I have Nicole Hart, who's my director of that division. That's the other division. I forgot that when I was listing a bunch of other stuff. It's our we do a lot of acronyms, so it's Leading Innovation, Green, Healthy, and Tomorrow, our light team. They actually go into the house, and they've helped Mrs. Smith go through a bedroom drawer to find the death certificate that we need in order to then refer that woman to volunteer legal services to remove her husband off the deed so that then she can qualify for weatherization or qualify for rehab. Because outside of all of the things that we try to do, unfortunately, we also find bureaucratic crap, to put it nicely, at each level. So, one of the things when we look at equity, I'm having conversations now with the state saying, we have children with lead hazards in their home, and if the mother or the grandmother has a judgment or a lien because they helped their nephew get out of jail and have a bail bond, I cannot approve them for a grant because of your underwriting standards for a grant that are like a loan, but are holding that person accountable for something that's not allowing me fix a public health matter. It's about the house, not the person. So let's take care of the house so that anybody that moves in there isn't exposed to lead.
That's good. Well. Well, look, I get inspired by this type of stuff because we haven't talked about one tweet, and it makes me very happy because I have not been able to touch a microphone without talking about a tweet for 40 minutes for a long time. Thank you. I think, I had a bunch of questions, but I think that there are questions out here as well. Is it possible for us to do Q&A or no? Did that microphone go away? That microphone's still back there. So if anybody's got questions for these folks, certainly walk back there and I'll call on you. But so Cincinnati, Baltimore, two iconic cities, obviously great leadership, trying to find a way to do two hard things, maybe get it done a little bit more easily by doing them together. But why is it so hard? In other words, you're swimming with strong strokes upstream. Why is it so difficult to do some of this stuff? It all sounds like common sense, but it's not easy. Yeah, go ahead.
Every single point we make. So one of the programs that I'm trying to do right now is we've built my model up. We weatherize a lot of homes. I've been lucky to have a lot of money to do that. We have over 10,000 homes weatherized in the city of Baltimore since 2009. But those families, which are all low income, do not have equitable access to clean energy. And I want to do an equitable, clean energy, sustainable financing model for low income families in the city of Baltimore. But every single turn that you take, there's somebody telling you that your idea isn't going to work for this reason, it's not going to work for that reason. They have their own mindset. There's never enough money. And if you really want to say that's one of the things, is that there is never enough money. And now even when we're looking at what's coming in from the federal government in terms of potential budgets that are slashing LIHEAP, slashing weatherization assistance, slashing all of the things that have actually produced jobs. And that's the other key piece of this program, is that I have predictions that we'll have 103 permanent jobs created by doing 1,000 solar installations in the city of Baltimore with close to 200 people trained, saving everybody on average anywhere between $31 to $71 per month, depending upon what financial model I end up using. So you can see all of the benefits, but there's never enough money, and there's people saying no. So how do you get around the people just say no?
If you have questions, you can go to the back. If somebody is burdened by lunch and doesn't feel like walking, raise your hand and I'll come to you.
You may want to pop in. We'll get some other questions.
Yeah, well, I can just say a few words about why it's so hard. With CMHA, we formed a partnership with the city of Cincinnati and Valeria and Joan with the sustainability training for about 2 years, the second year now, right? And just getting companies interested and educating companies about the necessity and the need to be sustainable has not been easy. I mean, you know, I'm continually, and we're continually recruiting companies to go through the sustainability training and certification and SIMS and that kind of thing. And they have to be convinced. They have to be convinced that it's worthwhile and that kind of thing. And we've got some good examples now that really promotes it to other companies, but it's still difficult. And it's like, I think you were talking earlier about changing the mindset. You know, you got the blind spots here. And plus, you know, we got to admit that low income, you know, small companies are struggling. I mean, they're struggling a lot more than they were 10 years ago because we see it. You know, just to keep the revenue level or get the revenue increases. It's not easy, especially in construction and janitorial maintenance, that kind of thing. So it's really just changing the paradigm.
I think what's hard is trying to do several things at once. Some of us, not me, think they're good multitaskers, and the scientists tell us we're biologically incapable of multitasking. We're really not multitasking, we're doing one thing at a time. And in most of our programs, we have a primary goal. We set out to do something. When I run a solar program, my goal is to get as many megawatts of solar installed as I can. And so if I design a program to optimize the number of panels that I get installed, how do I optimize it? I optimize it by giving a small subsidy for somebody who's going to pay the rest of the cost. You know, I'll pick up 20% of the bill, and some private entity is going to put in 80% of the bill. Well, guess what? I've just excluded everybody who can't put in 80%. And so if my goal is to install as many watts as possible and to spread them as evenly as possible across the community, I've just made the program a lot more complicated. It's what I have to do, but that's why it's hard. It's trying to do multiple things at once. When I hire a contractor to do the job for a city, I hire a contractor to clean up a contaminated piece of property. I want them to be really good at cleaning up a contaminated piece of property. When I also want them to subcontract a slice of that work and be responsible for the quality of work done by somebody who isn't them, I've made that job more complicated. We do that. It's important that we do that, but it makes the job more complicated when I'm trying to do more than one thing at once.
Sounds like you're saying that doing harder things is harder. We should take note of this. But well put. I like what you're talking about, the multitasking fallacy as well. Question in the back.
Yes, this is I'm Brian Gary. This is predominantly for Larry, and possibly the person from Baltimore might have a comment as well. I think most of us know that in Cincinnati, 74% of our African American children are in poverty. But if you sit in on a city council meeting every week, what we're doing with our funding is giving tax abatements to the mega rich and corporate welfare to multinational corporations, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars each week. As an example, $10 million is going to the old Poe Garage building of luxury condos. So to me, it's a pretty simple equation of stopping corporate welfare, stopping the tax abatements that we would use in the TIFs, and the money would go to the schools, to green jobs, to reduce poverty in our neighborhoods. Do you think it's that simple?
Somebody better say something.
So as a city employee, this would be a really bad time for me to comment about specifics within the pending budget that the city is about to adopt within the next 2 weeks. But what you're pointing to is, I think, exactly what I was just talking about, that when you're city council and you've got $2 billion a year to spend, and you have to divide it among, not 2 priorities at a time, but you're trying to accomplish 20 priorities at a time. But that really puts the exclamation point behind why it's so important to get out of the silos, not to do one thing at a time, and this pocket of money solves this problem, and this pocket of money solves that problem. Because if we can do energy efficiency work in our low-income housing and at the same time reduce our carbon footprint and make our housing more affordable for the people who are most interested, it's most important to have affordable housing, then we've spent money once and we've accomplished 2 of our objectives. And it's that kind of pairing between sustainability and equity that I think enables us to solve both of our problems instead of neither of them.
Alice?
It isn't simple. I think that one of the things that we have to strive for along the lines of what Larry said is balance. And balance is one of the hardest things sometimes to achieve. I know it's hard for me to achieve work-life balance, as well as other things. And, over 80% of the children in Baltimore City are eligible for free school breakfast, which puts them below the poverty line. Close to 25% of all of our families in Baltimore City are below the poverty line, meaning $20,000 or less per year in their family. We have over 14,000 vacant homes in Baltimore City. But our city council and the mayor our budget will be passed soon. The city council and the mayor went back and they just created a deal to reallocate $10 million more towards school funding, which we needed. We just laid off about 115 people from our schools 2 weeks ago. So, and there's a group in Baltimore of people, we just gave, I think, the largest TIF in the country approved for development down by the waterfront to kind of create a second downtown that's a vision. And some people are complaining or looking at the fact that why are we giving a TIF for this development when that money should be used for development in other places, when we actually do development in some of our other neighborhoods. But it's also about how do you balance where investment wants to be and where investment needs to be, and how do you have a voice at the table that's loud enough to say that we need to figure out a way to get investment where it needs to be.
Yes.
Tyra Oldham. Green is also economic. And as a former Maryland resident and born in Cincinnati, I looked at the 2 different programs. They had some interesting programs that they created for environmental changes, even when I lived there. When people didn't take care of their properties, they paid contractors such as myself to go clean them and made the homeowners responsible by putting liens on them. But the question I really want to address is, or ask, we talk about green. How's the city thinking about implementing new ways of paying small contractors, and also their larger contractors, because all that cycles down to the smaller contractors? When you talk about green, kind of closing the gap, making things smaller, or creating more creative ways to incentivize short-term payments for smaller companies who have to bear the burden of payments for 30, 45, 60 days, which are large terms for people. Because if we think about green and sustainability, it's just not in the infrastructure, but it's in the way we deal with one another, we treat each other economically so that we can do better and bigger things for one another. So hopefully that question is clear. If not, I can streamline and make it to the point.
I think it is clear. And, in city contracting, as in so many things, the devil is in the details. Cincinnati has been working on economic inclusion and how we spend our $2 billion a year for a long time, with mixed results. And let me give you a personal experience that helps you understand how complicated it can be. My office manages some environmental services contracts that are used for things like cleaning up contaminated property. And in those contracts, we have a requirement that if you get that contract, you need to have a specific amount of that money that is subcontracted to small and minority firms in order to make sure that the city's spend is done equitably throughout the community. But of course, there are provisions in those contracts to waive those inclusion requirements for various reasons, like, you know, if there's a particular kind of work for which there isn't a smaller minority contractor qualified to do that specialized job. And so we had a job that we were doing. We had a bid and we had proposals from several large companies. And we had a large company that we're getting ready to hire to do the work. And we said, okay, who are your subcontractors? And they said, well, we've really tried. We can't find anybody to sub that work to. We said, wait a minute, the city has 5 minority contractors certified in this particular job classification. There are companies out there to do the work. You gotta pick one. And they come back a week later and say, okay, we've had interviews with all of those companies. None of them meet our subcontracting requirements. Like, well, we've had, and you know, we're requiring that. So what are, you know, does that subcontractor have the insurance? Do they have the bonding? Do they have a resume full of job experience to show a prime contractor who's going to be financially responsible for the quality of the job, that that company's work will reflect well upon them? And then we're in a negotiating situation to try to tell somebody who it's their job to do the work whether a particular entity will or won't reflect well on their business reputation. That's a hard conversation to have with somebody. So, you know, we have been ramping up, not as fast as we'd like, but ramping up the extent to which city funds are spread throughout the community. But those kinds of discussions are real and are hard discussions because we really want that prime contractor to be proud of their company's reputation and jealously guarding their track record for doing top-notch work. And shotgun marriages sometimes don't work. And yet, that can't just be a blanket answer that says, we're not taking anybody else on because we don't take anybody else on. You know, as a city, we're not going to stand for that. And someplace in between is the balance point.
Well, I see a few more people in line. Let's get 2 questions, maybe 2 or 3, just so we kind of get a sense of where we are overall. And how much time do we have before we're done? So we've got till 2:15. It's about 1:50 now, so we've still got another good 25 minutes. So we can go deep, and let's hear from you first.
So I hope this will be kind of brief. Since there's so many of us in the room, I'm kind of new to Cincinnati. I've been here a couple of years, and I also was a late smartphone adapter, but I'm pretty happy with the Fix-It Cincy or Fix-It Cincy app. So if you don't have that on your phone, it is a really quick, easy way that you can report the kinds of potholes that were being described or a sign that has fallen down or something. So I don't know about you guys, but as a new person, I like to explore the city. And so if you are out exploring and you see that, you can download this app and you can report any of those problems, and you don't have to live in that area. So Fix It Cincy, and I don't work for the city.
Good information. Next.
Hi, and I was going to ask you this morning, Van, but I lost my nerve, so give me a second chance. I have a simple question that troubles me. We spend so much money for so long trying to end poverty.
We did?
Okay, let me rephrase it. Why is
I missed
ending
that one.
poverty, for all you're doing in Baltimore, all we do in Cincinnati, it just seems like poverty is getting worse, and I don't know how to think about that. And I would interest in the 4 of you, your thoughts about why this thing is so intractable. Thank you.
We'll let Ms. Kennedy go first.
So I have a theory about that. One of my theories is that I could and I've been tempted to do this, I haven't done it yet, but I would walk up to one of the corner boys in Baltimore, they're corner boys, that's what we call them, that are out selling drugs. And they're selling drugs to addicts. And typically the drugs sales team, for a better word, and the drug addicts are living in poverty, below the poverty line from a monetary standpoint. If I were to walk up to a drug addict who was jobless and an addict, and I would walk up to a drug salesman who has a job, and I'd offer them a high-paying, clean energy, solar job where they didn't risk their life being killed every day, benefits, could support a family, things like that, that both of them would be weary, whether or not you're an addict or the sailor, because at the end of the day, my theory is that they both suffer from the same thing. And they both suffer from a lack of self-worth, a lack of self-love, and a lack of positive influences in their life that tell them that they are worth doing something else and being better. We see this in our schools, where we have kids that go home, there's no adult at house. I mean, it happens all over. And in Baltimore, it's not just black, it's black and white. It's at all poverty levels. Drug problems are not just a black-white issue. It's not across race. It's not a racial issue. It's across every sector. When you're looking at some levels of poverty where it's that there's just an innate ability to get past some of your own hurdles. In a lot of ways, we are our own worst enemy. And in a lot of ways, those are because of the year after year, generation after generation of inherent trauma within families that keep going and going and going. And there are certain ways that some people are able to stop it. There's other people that want to continue. They're working 5 jobs. They're trying to make it work, and they still can't get it. And their kids are seeing that. Family trauma isn't just if you have a drug addict for a mother or a perfectionist for a mother. If you're at home and you have a mom that's working 2 jobs and is kind and loving, but you are constantly hearing her question how she's going to pay the electricity bill, that's childhood trauma. And that you don't know how to get across unless you have role models to do that. And that's part of my theory, is that we can put as much money to supporting job growth, but outside of just job growth and offering the job, we need to have other support services that are given to the family that are meaningful, and to break a stigma that it is okay to ask for help to get those support services.
I would just like to add to that. When I look at what's going on with the heroin epidemic in our in our area and stuff like that, one of the differences, major differences that I see now that I never saw in my life with any other epidemic like that, is that the community has rallied to find a solution. Think about it. The police, the courts, the medical field, everybody's rallying around together to find a solution to that. I have not seen that in other epidemics that have gone across, that have come across my life since I've been here. But I see that as the solution, because a lot of times we want to say, oh, just put it on them. That's just them. You know, let them figure it out. But that's not how it works. That's not how solutions work. I mean, if it's a community solution, I think we got a better shot than just putting it back on, they just need to go to school or do this or do that. Because my thing is, it's not only how they're treated in the family, it's how the community treats them. That's very important to me.
I'm going to address the question from a different perspective. Why does it seem like poverty is getting worse? I'd start with the observation that we all live on a spaceship. Planet Earth is, hurtling through space at whatever speed it's going at, and we are all riding along on this ball of mud flying through space, and what we have to work with forever is the resources that are here now, and there's no resupply ship coming. And our population is increasing. There's 6 billion of us. And as our population heads towards 9 billion, the slice of available resources gets sliced thinner and thinner and thinner. So why does it seem like poverty is getting worse? And then we have an economy that's based on taking our planet's resources, using them once and putting them in the landfill. And so if we think on this spaceship that we can use things once and keep using things once and putting them in the landfill, we know that that's a prescription for disaster. If we can't get to closed loop thinking, taking the same resources and using them over and over and over again, figuring out how to take what we've already used and use it to make our next round of products, that's the only way that we're going to meet the needs of all of us on this spaceship, because we've got a finite supply of resources. And so it's single-use thinking that ultimately is the root of impoverishing us, and closed cycle thinking that can convert us from an economy of scarcity to an economy of abundance.
I don't know if any of that scratched your itch. Did it?
It helps.
Help.
How about your thoughts?
I think three things. I don't think that America's government has ever seriously tried to eradicate poverty. I think we've tried to manage poor people, but that's not the same thing. So I just think that there's this mythology that we spent all this money trying to end poverty and then failed. We spent money trying to get to the moon because somebody said we could get to the moon, and we got to the moon. Nobody said we would get to zero poverty in America, and then we missed that. So we've tried to manage poor people. I don't think we've tried to end poverty. Number two, we as Americans tend to be focused on individuals. We don't do as good a job thinking about structures and systems. In some ways, because it sounds like passing the buck. And I want to make a couple of comments about structures and systems, and then I want to talk about what I think might make more sense for us going forward. Just about the time we started getting racially integrated, we started, and for unrelated reasons, shedding a lot of blue-collar manufacturing and industrial jobs through the 70s, 80s, 90s. So just as some populations started being able to get into the job market and be hired and be able to sue if they weren't, et cetera, those jobs started going overseas. And so if you don't keep that in mind, it just seems like somebody forgot to get motivated to get a job someplace, or some groups are just lazy, or just don't have good work ethic, or maybe they're badly educated, or maybe they're just bad people. But we don't ever talk about the fact that the target moved and got a lot smaller and a lot farther away at exactly the same time that we got some racial integration going. Now, that same process is accelerating. You got a bunch of white folks who are getting shoved overboard, and a lot of white folks are being thrown under the bus, because you have not only globalization and the job leaving, but it's worse than that. Bernie Sanders says he's going to bring the manufacturing jobs back to America. And President Trump says he's going to bring the manufacturing jobs back to America. And they're both lying. They're both full of crap. Because you might bring manufacturing back to America, but you're not bringing manufacturing jobs back to America. When manufacturing left, you had a whole lot of people working on very few machines. When manufacturing comes back, you're going to have a whole lot of machines worked on by very few people. Your main threat is robots. Your main threat is artificial intelligence. Your main threat is driverless cars. Your main threat is drones. In other words, Silicon Valley is going to wipe out 1 billion jobs on planet Earth, period. And it'll be great for consumers and bad for workers. That's coming. So now the problem is neither the right nor the left wants to deal with that. There is no Occupy Silicon Valley. Because all of them have their smartphones out and they're happy. But what they're clicking on is clicking on them. And so there's a whole other wave of displacement coming. And that's why white folks are having a hard time and are being less generous and being, some of them tricked into being mean and xenophobic. Because hurt people holler, as I said, and help doesn't seem to be on the way. Because the right-wing populism says be mad at immigrants, be mad at Washington, D.C., and be mad at Hollywood elites, none of whom are wiping out your jobs. And the left-wing populism says be mad at Wall Street, which is, has its own problems, but you could tax Wall Street from here to the cows come home. It's not going to deal with the robots. So you've got a massive bipartisan leadership failure across the board. The only practical people are the people in this room, at least trying to get something done. But most of the stuff is nonsense. So what would actually fix it? Part of what would fix it, from my point of view, is Willie Jones. No one's applauding. My daddy. The hell? My daddy. Rest his soul. Willie Jones had this whole thing figured out. Willie Jones was born in 1944 under segregation and poverty in Memphis, Tennessee. Willie Jones joined the military to get out of poverty at a time when most people were running out of the military. My dad ran in. My father got out of the military, put himself through college, married the college president's daughter, my mama, because my daddy had it like that. Yes, he did. And then he put his little brother through college. And then he put his cousin through college. And then my dad and my mom put me and my sister through college and got us out. My dad will tell you from the very beginning, liberals and conservatives do not know what they're talking about when it comes to poverty. My dad was the most conservative person I ever met and the most liberal, because that's what it takes to eliminate poverty. My dad will tell you liberals are wrong because they think they can give you money and that will stop you from being poor. My dad said, that's ridiculous. You can give somebody money and stop them from being broke. But if they're still poor in their heart, if they're still poor in their skills, if they're still poor in their self-esteem, if they're still poor in their self-worth, if they're still poor in their abilities, they'll be broke again tomorrow. Every poor person has to climb that ladder out of poverty based on their own efforts, based on their own initiative, based on their own acquisition of skills, or they'll be right back down in that hole. Liberals don't want to hear that. But my father said the conservatives are wrong as well, because what the conservatives don't understand is, yes, every child has an obligation and a responsibility to climb that ladder out of poverty. But grown folk have a responsibility to make sure every child has a ladder to climb. That's also required. You can't ask a child to build their own ladder and climb it. And right now you have a 7-story ladder out of poverty with 2 rungs on it, and that very few people can climb. Some superhuman kids can climb it, but not that many. And more people are falling down than climbing up. So there is a role. So what does this say? What it says is that it's not about we need more conservative answers or we need more liberal answers. It takes both answers, and both need to be better. We need better liberals who can be more creative, who can be more innovative to figure out how to get more programs funded and functional, and how to make sure there's not a bunch of waste and nonsense going on, so that the financing mechanisms are better, the technology is smarter. We need better liberals on the program side. But if you've ever gone to a program that works for poor folk, especially for poor kids, on the outside of the building, they're all liberals. Give us more money, feed the babies, help the world. On the inside of the program, they are drill sergeants. Conservative, you show up on time, et cetera, this is very important. They may have some supportive stuff. It may be trauma informed, but there's a high value on individual responsibility and follow through and that kind of stuff. And so this tribal warfare that's broken out in the country, where liberals and conservatives actually can't work together, think we're enemies, think each other is stupid, and are defriending each other on Facebook as our primary political activity these days, is just hurting poor people. Because poor people need both liberal and conservative engagement. You need both Jack Kemp and Bobby Kennedy. You need both Jack Kemp and Shirley Chisholm to make a difference. And right now, I don't see any of those kind of folks on the national scene. That's my answer to your question.
Thank you.
Wow. My question has been answered, but not answered. And I know we're a society based upon slavery, and also we try to destroy the native peoples here, and we've suffered that basic sin that we've created within our own society. And I agree that we don't want to eliminate poor people because we still want to keep working out of slavery. We want slaves. We want people working at a minimum wage, which is slave wages. They cannot pay their bills. They cannot repair the window that's broken. They can't get the right food for their children. So there's problems in school because they can't feed them properly, and so on and so forth. So my question is, what happened to fairness in our society? We are a capitalist society. I don't think we value the worker. I think we've lost the value of work. My father was a carpenter, drove nails for 35 years. And his work, he had to fight for his work. He had to fight to get paid the salary that he deserved. And he told me the story as I was growing up that someone who had money that employed him, he kept a record of how many hours he worked building the houses that this man was going to sell. And the man said, "Oh, that was a nice job. I'll give you a couple $100 for that." My dad said, "No, you won't. You're going to give me $1,000 for that because here's the hours I worked and here's what you agreed to pay me." And so he had to fight to get the fairness to pay for the food that we ate as kids. And that challenge is still going on today. And so what I'm asking for is, I don't know if we could raise the minimum wage. To me, I know money is not the answer, but if you don't give somebody enough money, they're not motivated to do the job. And they're not being respected in their job that they're providing.
Okay.
So, can we raise the minimum wage $1 an hour instead of saying, okay, go to 15 right now from 8 to 15? Why not $1 this year and another $1 next year, and another $1, and let the corporations see how that is going to fit in with their corporation?
Well, you disappointed me. You started off as a screaming radical, and you end up as a moderate. So, listen, we have, it's a good question about the minimum wage and those kind of issues. We only have 6 more minutes before we're over. Let's get these last, is that 1 or 2 questions? Let's get these last 2. But we have 4 questions in 6 minutes. So even on TV, that's tough. So can we have actual questions which are like a sentence with a question mark at the end?
All right, ready for my run-on sentence. So you've talked a lot about sustainability and not using necessarily sustainability in conversation about what you do, though I'm sure all of you have to at some point, especially in the positions that you have. So how do you balance creating sustainability initiatives, especially at the scale that you guys do, while also engaging in conversation with the people that you're trying to benefit, so in the communities that you're trying to benefit? So where is that balance between I'm going to create this solution for you and what solution do you guys actually need, and where is that balance between those two?
Thank you.
And I wrote my question down but I have to do my preamble. I have 3 boys. One has autism and Down syndrome, and one has ADHD, and they're almost all teenagers. So I'm very concerned with, given the growing prevalence or just better diagnosis of special needs, and my observations of many millennials who have very short attention spans and expect immediate results, what is some of the leading edge thinking of the future of green jobs inclusion?
Okay. And last question here.
Yeah, I'm Uche Agomo. My question is, what stops us from stepping outside the box and learning, say from corporate, I know we are governmental, private, like the city and the communities. Why can't we reach out to industries? There are best-in-class industries that have been successful in inclusion. VIV, some of them have accountability, and that's what drove that. They implemented accountability, so that helps. The other thing is, being a foreigner, where I came from, education was our ticket out of poverty. What stops us from making the school system to be at par? No matter where you live in the country, you have the same type of education.
So I'm going to let you guys, so first of all, just hearing the questions is somewhat educational, even if the question doesn't get answered. It just gives you a sense of some of the quality of thinking in the room. So just thank all the questioners, just because, it takes some courage to go up there. But we've hit on everything from minimum wage to how we balance the desire to come up with good ideas and listen to the community, to how do we fix the school system. So you got a target-rich environment for your closing statements, and whatever you say will edify us, and please go ahead.
Yeah, the one about how do I talk about sustainability and inclusion to the clients and companies that I work with, the residents and companies. I don't. I talk about jobs and business contracts and awards, and that's what they react to. Now, in my head, I realized after going through sustainability training with the city that I am doing sustainable work in the economy and the societal equity area, but that's in my head. But I don't talk that to my clients. What I talk to my clients are about jobs and contracts and business development and that kind of thing, and that works for me.
In this room, when we talk about sustainability, one of the things that is often said about it is triple bottom line thinking. Again, language that doesn't work out on the streets, but at the same time gives you a concept that is an essential concept for this discussion. Because Cincinnati is not a community where we can do green just because it's green. That would never fly. There's some places in the country where you can, and Cincinnati's not one of them. I spend a lot more time as the city's sustainability director talking about the economics of my projects and talking about the job creation and the quality of life impacts of my projects than I talk about selling the green attributes. I design a project that saves more money than it costs and creates jobs and helps people live more comfortably in their homes, and mostly never bother to tell the decision makers that, by the way, it reduces greenhouse gas emissions. And so, I talked before about how hard it is to achieve multiple goals simultaneously. Actually, when you're doing sustainability work, that isn't always true. Sustainability work is usually about eliminating waste, and economic waste and environmental waste are the same thing. Something you bought and paid for, now you're throwing it away without using it, and that's as economically stupid as it is environmentally stupid. And so really doing sustainability work is about finding the language that's going to work for your audience. I'm real good about finding the language that works for my audience when my audience is municipal decision makers. The language of talking to people in my poor neighborhoods is language that I'm still learning to talk, and probably people in this room could help me a lot with that, but it really is a matter of being multilingual and talking about the programs in ways that your audience understands.
I would say that goes back to, in my opening statement, was talking about the idea of translation and how back in 2008, that was one of the guiding principles of the creation of our sustainability plan. But I'd add on top of that, not only is it how we as professionals talk about sustainability or think it's, it goes along the same line as a funder, where how many of us have had to write a grant proposal to fit certain things that really aren't what the community wants or what this is going to happen, but it's because the funder thinks that they know what the community needs. So we have to try to pigeonhole ourselves into something that is going to fail from the very beginning because some people in a boardroom with a lot of money think that that's what's going to solve the problem and be the solution. So for me, it's not just about translation, about how we talk about this, but it's also about active listening and how we are in the community, not just to check a box off, but we're in the community practicing our active listening skills. And if you haven't practiced your active listening skills lately, I highly recommend that you do that. And it can really allow us, and it's allowed me as a practitioner, to then find common ground with the people that I'm here to serve. I'm a public servant, and my job is to serve the people of Baltimore. And I have some ideas. Some of them I think are really great because I do have a tiny ego, but some of them I know are sucky. And some of them I know that aren't going to solve, but at least it's a starting point for a discussion. And the ideas have to come from the community, and there has to be community buy-in, and there has to be communities members at the table, in the boardrooms, in City Hall, in my office, having and being a part of the discussion. We can't do this and put something on paper and then just go out and try to make it work. Everybody has to be, so it's translation, inclusion, and back to the active listening. And from the education piece of it, Baltimore City, we have a school system that's struggling. We have children that are not reading above a third grade reading level. Education is part of the sustainability of our cities and our country, and it can't be ignored. And when you're looking at sustainability plans, measures of education and proficiency need to be a part of that. One of the things that we do is my AmeriCorps, our Energy Challenge program. I would not have that program if it weren't for my AmeriCorps members. And we have community members that we get in to be AmeriCorps members of all different varying education levels, abilities, to do varying jobs that are job training, but then they have the education and stipend award at the end, and we connect them with the right people. So we do AmeriCorps, not only out talking about energy education and energy conservation, installing LED light bulbs, but we're also talking to them about how to interview for a job, how to fill out an application for college, what do you need to do for these pieces on a box, how are you going to use your education award, and what can you do? So outside of the bigger picture of education in our country, which we won't solve here today, there are little things that we can think of in the work that we do that help increase educational opportunities for everybody.
Very good. Look, I want to say just one thing before we go, and it's about the brownie box. Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about when I talk about the brownie box. Okay, this will be useful then. I want to underscore the piece about the active listening. I think increasingly that's going to be the differentiator in terms of leadership going forward. It used to be who could be the most dynamic speaker. Nobody has time to listen to a speech anymore, so they're just clicking and tweeting anyway. It's who can be the most powerful listener. I think that's very, very important. But sometimes you do have to talk. Many of you don't use apps to get food to your house. You actually still go to the supermarket. Who still goes to the supermarket? Okay, that's almost everybody. That won't be true in 10 years, but right now, that's what you do. And something happens to you when you go to the supermarket. You park your car, you go in a thing, and all you wanted was some milk. You just needed some milk, and you wind up walking. The milk is always in the far back. It's never right there by the counter. It's in the far back because you got to walk all the way through the store to get the milk. And as you walk through the store, you passed on your left the brownie box. And there it is. The brownie's sitting there. It's so beautiful and a little crumbly off of there, and it looks so moist. And you don't mean to stop and stare at the brownie box. But you find yourself just looking at it, and then it's in your basket. and soon it's on your waistline. And you don't know what happened. This is the genius of people who are trying to kill you. There's something else that is not visible to you. The back of the brownie box. Now, the back of the brownie box has all the ingredients. It has how you cook it. It has all these chemicals you've never heard of. There's tons and tons of information on the back of the brownie box. But they never put the back of the brownie box facing the aisle. That's what people like you do. You have a product to sell. It is a beautiful city with kids flourishing and thriving, with great jobs and clean energy and clean water and the storm surge just flowing out to sea with people surfing on it happily away. I mean, there's no problems in the city you're trying to create. That's the front of the brownie box. But you don't talk about the front of the brownie box. You try and talk about the back of the brownie box. You talk about sustainability and equity and this bill and that bill and this grant thing and this 15 acronyms, and nobody buys the product. All I'm saying is that, of course, you have to know all these terms. Of course, we have to be multilingual. Of course, of course, of course. But don't lead with the back of the brownie box when you're talking to people. Know it, have it, it's in your back pocket. Train your staff, write the grants. But when you get out in the community, show them the front of the brownie box, and I guarantee you they'll take you home. Thank you very much.
Wow.